everyone, Ben Nelson, the everyday real estate investor here, coming at you with another episode of the podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate the support, and hopefully, you're always learning a lot and taking a lot away from these podcasts. And I am very excited because I have another fantastic guest here today. I have Dr. Eric Holsapple, entrepreneur and founder of Living in the Gap, here with us today, and we're going to chat a little bit about all sorts of different things. Eric, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me. Excited to be on.
Awesome. Well, I always start with let's talk about your background a little bit. Just give us a kind of a quick version of your experience and in entrepreneurship and anything else that might be pertinent for listeners, just so that they know who they're listening to right now.
Yeah. So I came out with an MBA in finance, a long time ago. I'm kind of old, in the mid 80s, and started in real estate and commercial real estate and was immediately successful. Within a couple of years, I was running a North American division of an Australian firm. They moved me to Los Angeles, and I was running offices in Denver and Princeton, New Jersey. I had Western Canada. And it was just a lot of travel. Was really successful early. I learned a bunch, but inside I was kind of dying. I was overweight. I wasn't, exercising. I was drinking too much. And I got a transfer from them into Boston to handle a New York Stock Exchange company that they were having trouble with. And I really had an epiphany moment that just said, I was in my early 30s, and I said, you got to make some changes. You're not going to be around very long. So I went
Mm,
off on my
yeah.
own. I decided to go back and get a PhD in economics. I wanted to teach and kind of find a bigger purpose. And I also went out of my own investing and those kind of things at that time. I stumbled into yoga, which was my first entry into mindfulness. And I got through my PhD and started teaching part time. And this really launched my own business. At the same time, my older brother had introduced me to meditation. Uh, and I started it, and I didn't come out for a long time. I was a private closet meditator. I just did it on my own. But I had immediate results with it. I just did it on my own for years, and then later we formed LC Real Estate Group, and one by one people became interested, and we changed our vision statement to mindfully creating community. I was a developer primarily, where we built shopping centers and industrial land plays and residential subdivisions, and did a lot of those kind of things, and uh, built a company around that theme. And that's how we run it today. Mostly, I'm most do investment today. I'm a little bit older. The development game isn't for old people. I don't find late city council meetings and the risk involved and some of those things. But
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was really my biggest skill set. And now I do a lot of investing, and I also run the nonprofit you mentioned called Living in the Gap.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. So I'm going to hit on one of the things in there that I thought was really cool, and so that's so correct me because I'm not going to. I don't remember exactly what the mission was, but it was mindfully creating communities, something like that,
Yes,
right?
mindfully creating community.
I got it. Awesome. Perfect. I love that. Can you touch on that a little bit more, just because I have my perception of what that means, but I'd love to hear yours.
It really, and particularly for real estate, I think for all businesses, but particularly for real estate, you're only as good as the community with which you're in. The stronger our community is, economic base wise and people wise, and the whole network of what a community is, the stronger your investments are going to be. I mean, we see what's happening now in some communities like San Francisco, say that, that they're crumbling, the
Mm,
community aspect with homelessness and whatnot, and what's happening in the real estate. It's not coincidental that the real estate is finding is following a similar trajectory.
yeah.
So, and it also means participating in the community. And I found that through nonprofit work, you know, it is we own the nonprofit. I don't know, we own it's too strong, but we participate in the nonprofit community. We have try to have somebody on almost every board and community that we have in the community, and we participate, and we find through something that I describe in the book is called the precession effect, that the world works at 90-degree angles. If I can make a cold call and I'll get 1 in 1,000 or something that'll and something will happen, or 1 in 100, depending on how good you are at it, and or how vigilant you at it. But there's a whole nother world in which we just get out in the community and flow. And if I'm at a Habitat board meeting or the community, the food bank or whatever it is, and I get to meet other leaders on that level, I find that the referral network in that meeting other leaders is the strongest lead network that there is. I was in the chair of the Economic Development Corp, and I was in there, and a guy named Ralph, who was a real estate broker for the group here, one of the largest residential real estate, came up to me and said, "Eric, I love what you do. You've been teaching with the university. I know you develop shopping centers. North Fort Collins needs a developer. Would you go have lunch with so and so?" It was just there, and I said, sure, I would have had. 5 years later, we're developing a Kroger, shopping center for these folks on the north end of Fort Collins. And it was something I could have tried and pushed and, tried to do that for years. And it just happened like 90-degree angles means like bees go into flowers, right, to get honey, to make honey. And they accidentally at 90 degrees pollinate the world.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
gravity, the sun pulls the earth to it, but the earth doesn't crash into it. It goes 90 degrees around it. There's just so many different things that set our karma, cause and effect, by what we do. So I find service work is gratitude in action, gives me the right mindset, and it sets off uh, a whole different sequence of events that might never happen if I just stay in my silo, just
Yeah.
saying, well, I'm an investor someday. So many people, well, I won't say most, but so many people just say, oh, someday, once I've made it, I'll give back. And
Hmm.
I've found just the opposite's true, particularly in real estate, that no, if I give back, I've already made it.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
make it. I'll
great.
make it.
I
So,
love that mindset, and the key I think is that you're doing it not with like, oh well, if I serve here, I'm gonna get something
totally.
out of it. The service part comes first, and that's the focus, not what you're
No,
getting
no.
out of it. And
Yeah.
this, what you get out of it comes naturally by
It's
just
like
being.
having commission breath, right? That
Yeah,
you're only in the deal for the
right,
commission. You can smell that on somebody. No, it has to
absolutely.
be, I'm there genuinely to help.
Yep.
But I'm aware and I'm open to meeting people and other people and helping them. It's just on those casual, more informal meetings. That's where you form bonds that are long lasting.
Yeah.
It isn't just in a transactional closing. They can happen, but when I'm really in the trenches with somebody trying to help another person, you really see what someone's about, and
Yeah.
that you just form stronger bonds, I found.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, great mindset to have is the mindset of service, and then everything else kind of takes care of itself. So love it. So let's talk a little bit more about this concept of living in the gap. So this is your nonprofit, right? This is
Yeah.
your brand. So what does that mean? And talk a little bit more about that mindset
Well,
and what that
you
does.
know, we have some 6,000 thoughts a day. Most of mine are repetitive and not that helpful. You know, there's an old Zen saying that says, "I never had an original thought." They're all planted in there from somewhere, and they just keep bubbling up. So living in the gap is starting to notice that and coming a little separation between thought and our visions and who we really think we are, who we really are as human beings with consciousness and being present and those kind of things. So we start to notice that we have thoughts, and there's a little gap that's created because stress and anxiety reside in thoughts. It's not what's happening. In fact, if you look, some of the most surreal accidents and things, people say everything just slowed down, and I
Hmm.
just did this amazing thing, that I never would have believed. It isn't what's happening to us, it's our thoughts about them, our thoughts about the past or the future. But if we can be present, it's more calm. So living in the gap is saying, hey, sure, I make plans about the future and I look at the past occasionally. For sure, in business, I look at my financial statements, I look at cash sheets, I have a strategic plan for each asset. But in between those times, I try to just be present, which is in the gap, and to be with the people that I'm with and not focus just on the thought, but focus on the relationships, focus on listening, focus on being. And I found that I can do both. I can have goals and objectives and accomplish things in the material world, and I can also be present or in the gap. Not all the time, and I'm not perfect at it. If you
Right,
ask my
right.
wife, she'll tell you.
Yeah, I think that's such a key, especially these days. I mean, we have so many things that can distract us, and you just you go, being in the moment is becoming more and more difficult. The more
Yeah,
technology we get, the more our culture changes. And you just sit at a restaurant and look around and you see it, right? How many people are actually they're enjoying the experience and the company they're with, and how many people are just sitting there, they're all on their phones, looking at social media and all that stuff. And it's like, why are you even here? Like, why are you with these people? Because you're not, right? You're physically there, but you're not mentally present. Like,
exactly.
yeah,
And I'm not in this work because I'm enlightened. I'm in this work because I need it like everybody else does. And I
yeah,
notice it, and I pay attention to it, and I do my best to, uh, if we don't demand our focus back, business is great at taking it.
yeah.
The Facebook, the media, the advertisements. I mean, everything's in there trying to grab our focus and little bits of it and just split it up and whatnot. The only defense we really, and I don't think it's going to get better, I think it's going to get worse.
Hmm.
Our only real defense is our own self saying, no, I'm going to take a walk once a day without my phone.
Right.
I'm going to
Yeah.
not have my phone, or when I go home at night, I'm going to put it in the holster. I might check it once in a while, but I don't need to be on fire all the time. It's
Yeah.
okay if I email somebody back an hour later or a day later. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be instantaneous.
Yeah. It
You
is
know,
it is difficult to do it, when with kind of the cultural expectations, right? Of people, as a broker, sometimes I'll get a call from someone, and then, if I don't respond in the next 30 minutes, it's like, you get a call, a text, and an email, and it's like, oh, this guy's not available. It's like, geesh,
it,
maybe I'm with someone right now or something, right?
well, but think about dating. When someone's got a little bit of a lure and is not immediately available, it's more attractive. You
That's
know,
very true. Yeah.
who do you, I mean, we really want to deal with the busy person that's got all the deals.
Yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
person may not be immediately available. So some of it's also, our own stick that we've
Yeah.
created it.
Yeah.
We've created that. And I've done it myself too. So I'm not,
Yeah.
but we don't have to be that instantaneous.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, sometimes something requires, I mean, usually, like, I remember when I had three teenagers and I was going, if I didn't answer the phone, they'd say, Dad, I tried to call you, so I didn't get you. So I went ahead and went to the concert. I figured, so I was pretty much on my phone during that time because I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I was cutting off oh, you didn't know I went on the overnight because you didn't say no.
Oh
Uh,
gosh.
but,
Loved it.
so we all have times like, and there's also ways to block phones so that, only certain calls, if I get my
Yeah.
wife or somebody important, they can come through, but every call doesn't come through and ring every minute.
Yeah.
There's some ways we can deal with those things.
Yeah. This is all great stuff. Yeah. And it's like, I know some, so the thing is, it's like, I know some people are probably like, what does this have to do with real estate? Like, only everything, right? Because it's like,
Everything.
but yeah, balance and life success. I mean, it doesn't do any
Well,
good to be this ultra successful, quote unquote, uh, real estate entrepreneur or whatever you're doing in business, and just have the rest of your life be
well,
chaos, right? Or be so stressed or whatever. You got to draw these boundaries and be mindful and all of this stuff.
one of the things I like real estate more than stocks and some of the other things is it doesn't move quite as fast. I
That's
find,
yeah,
I watch stocks as a leading indicator of real estate, for what happens eventually with real estate. But real estate, is long term lead times, long term
yeah,
leases, long term finance, long term, and it doesn't have to be, you have to pay attention and you have to be ready to make decisions. I find, when I'm ready to make a decision, I have a competitive advantage on other landlords, but it doesn't move as fast as, and there are some industries that are just like on that edge. And I warn people how long you're going to live there, because it's so on. You have to be off sometimes. You
yeah,
can't be on all the time and be healthy.
yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, hey, you kind of touched on it a little bit, so I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump here. You have a PhD in economics, right?
Yes.
So you mentioned economics and stocks and things. So let's jump into
Great.
that a little bit.
Oh, I
So
love it.
that's a hard transition, but that's okay.
No,
We
no, it's
went
not.
from mindset and mindfulness and living in the gap and all that, but let's talk about economics a little bit. There's a lot going on in our economy and in the world, and I don't have a PhD in economics, so I'd be curious to hear kind of some of your maybe high level thoughts. I mean, you could probably talk for hours on the economy and not even scratch the surface, but what are your just kind of overarching thoughts right now on what's going on economically and what people can maybe
Yeah.
expect moving forward?
Well, I mean, real estate cycles, everything cycles, right? They go back. I mean, and generally real estate is a lagging cycle to the rest of the economy. Just for those reasons that it's tied to long-term leases, it takes a while to put a building up. You can't, once you start a building, the economy change, you can't stop it. Well, the building, you can't stop it till the building's done, so we tend to oversupply the market,
Hmm.
and then so we do cycle, and to pay attention to that, and there's different times in a cycle when it's better to invest, and it's usually ironically and counterintuitively for many, most of the time is when the market is doing less well. I've made
Hmm.
way more money in slow times, in down times, than I have in peak times, because I think it's a lot more risky. Everybody's in the bank when the
Yeah,
bank
everybody's in. It's a lot more competitive. People are taking thinner margins. A lot of that stuff.
banks just throwing money at people,
Yep.
so the cap rates get compressed,
Hmm.
investment prices go up, those kind of things. So generally, I'm more of a seller in those times. The other thing is, I mean, everybody's freaked out about the interest rate. Well, it hasn't. The prices in my market anyway haven't really adjusted to reflect that. So we're being pretty patient. You need a 2% spread or so between what the interest rate is and what a cap rate yield is that you're going to pay, on the return on investment to have something. And most people are still hanging on. I mean, the banks, as their loans come to maturity and they have to do something else, that will shift over
Yep.
time. But so many people are just hanging on saying, oh, God, no, I paid this. I can't let that go yet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in our market here in Portland, and we're a pretty small market, but um, just looking at multifamily specifically, and that's one sector, right? But um, 2022 was about half of the sales as it was in 2021, and then this year we're on pace for about 20% of that,
Yeah.
25% of that. Just nobody is selling because, to your point, it's like, well, I can't stomach taking that loss, or I'll just hold on to it. And so sellers are just kind of holding on to these lower cap rates, and buyers are like, well, I can't pay that. That doesn't make any sense, right? Nothing pencils.
Generally, I've found if you're there, accepting that there's a loss and taking it in the long run is usually better. Just take the loss, take your tax advantage, and then move on, keep it more of a liquid state, or just keep cleaning things up. So many people that can't take a loss, and that's part of detachment in the mindfulness world. Just being
Mhm.
detached from those kind of things, just saying, no, I'm going to take this and move on. I'm going to accept what is. I'm going to accept that's there, and take it and move on. I've found I always try to clear the deck and not have a lot of bad things hanging. If I can make each investment work, when I add them up, my portfolio is going to work.
Yeah,
But if I have some shadows and some cloudy things and whatnot, and sometimes you have to have, and they just take a long time, and some things just can't be sold for a price, or and that's all right. But if you can stomach it and take it, you're usually better off. And even though it's going to hit your net worth, and you're because if you feed things for a long time, that adds up. And if you're
yeah,
not
it
willing to
does.
take it, so generally, I found you're better off taking. The other thing I'd say is people are really upset about the interest rate hike, but you know, interest rates will come down again when we have a recession.
Yep.
That's the reality. And now the Fed, particularly where the national debt is so high, we just don't have a lot of tools for to bat a recession. But dropping interest rates is a huge one. So
Mhm.
long term, we're better off if we can survive. I mean, in a little higher interest rate. I mean, I was around in 1999. Interest rates were 8%. You
Yeah.
know, I
Yep.
remember we financed a shopping center. If it goes below 8, we're locking. At
Yeah.
8, and then we locked, and it went through the floor. The other thing one thing I learned in getting a PhD is nobody knows what the interest rate's going to go. It
Right.
is so
Yeah.
complicated. They tell you, I mean, there might be indications that say it should go up or go down, but generally they'll bring the interest rates down when they have to move the economy. When
Yeah.
demand slows down and they're trying to get it going and they have to, or all the politicians will get thrown out, if they don't do something, they work towards bringing interest rate, and that is a good thing for us to be. I mean, if interest rates at 2%, dropping them to 1 doesn't stimulate the economy nearly as much if they're at 8% and you drop them to 4.
Right.
And then people say, hey, at that rate these things are starting to work. So long term, yeah, it hurts. I don't like it any more than anybody else does,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there are some long-term benefits to a little higher interest rate environment, because we have a lot of options to cut them when the next, and recessions are inevitable. I
Yeah.
mean, we're going to
Yeah.
have them. It's just
Just
a thing,
part of how economics works, and
and
whether side of the spectrum you fall on as far as, you know, how you think economics should work, right? Keynesian or Austrian
yep,
economics, it's, they all have cycles and they all have,
totally.
they work themselves out, or they're worked out by pulling levers either way.
And
So
it's not generally something you can control.
it is
So
not. No.
it's something you have to observe, and I say, I want to try to set myself so I'm okay whichever way it goes somehow.
Yeah.
I don't want, because you don't know. If inflation is really a bugger and they really can't get at it, who knows? And it's a
Yeah.
global, can be a global phenomenon. What we do in the United States, may not be everything. It's what they're doing in China and, Europe and other places that matter a lot too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to economics. Trying to understand every piece is difficult, and even people like yourself that have studied it a lot, you guys don't all agree either. So it's like you got to do the best that you can with the information that you have. Pay
I,
attention
I
and
will
make
also,
decisions based on that.
the other thing I'd say is, one of the greatest things I've learned about how to survive downturns is it ties back more into the mindfulness, is the power of relationships. I've
Absolutely.
noticed that in slow times, transactional people don't call you back.
Hmm.
When you really need someone to talk to see what's going on and whatnot, and you're just staying up at night, you can't sleep because your investment's going here and you're running out of cash and you're doing those kind of things. I've found that the long-term relationship folks, I mean, they may not bail me out, but they'll talk to me. They'll say, I'm not going to do it because, and that's huge information. Or they may give you a referral to someone else or
Yeah.
something else. But if you're sitting there stuck and there's nobody to talk to, it's hard to get the information you need to crawl back out of the hole. But it's amazing what'll happen. And also, I think people do business in times, when that know you, like you, and trust you. So we've had lenders come in during the recession of '07, '08. We got some loans that were just impossible to get because of our reputation and our relationships in the community. So that relationships that you have, and again, like we said before, it's not like having fake ones. It's really
Right.
genuinely caring about other people and being interested in them and whether their business is going well or not, and actually, getting to know people as people is huge for downturns,
Absolutely.
because you need to continue to talk with people and get that market information, and they may do something that's out of the box because they know you, like, and trust you, or they may at least call you back and say, we ain't doing that anymore. You might try, this bank or this broker or
Hmm.
whatever. So
Yes, that
those long-term
relational capital.
relationships are huge.
Yep.
Say it again.
Absolutely. Oh, it's that, yeah, that relational capital, right? Everybody thinks
Oh,
about
it's
your
huge.
monetary capital, but they forget about all the different aspects of capital and relationship. Relational capital is a big one for
It's
sure.
huge in downturns,
Yep.
and in good times you can get by. Everybody's getting by, but when the cycle turns, who you going to call back and who's going to call you back?
Yeah,
And think
absolutely.
about that when you don't answer a phone back. When you don't
Yep.
reply to someone else. What are you doing to that relational capital?
Yeah, and I see people when times are really, really good and easy, you see people do things that are really short-sighted. You see builders slash, buyer agent commissions down to almost nothing. You see, all sorts of things that are like, wow, you're really alienating the people that, yeah, right now you're going to get away with it because uh, people are just buying, people are just buying stuff like left and right. It's not a big deal. But when you need them, now those people that you've alienated, and that's just one example. I see it all the
Yeah.
time in lots of other ways. But those people that you're going to need them. You're going to need them to show your properties and do all these other things. But you kind of shot yourself in the foot when you didn't need them, right?
We call that
Um,
penny wise and pound foolish,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, and you just people and businesses show their colors, their true colors in times like that, I think, when it's
Both
like, "Well,
times.
I
They
don't
show
need."
the times. I mean, it's also usually easy to be a good guy when things are going well, and you really
Yeah,
get to know somebody when the shit hits the fan. What's
absolutely.
going on?
That's very true. When things are not going well, that's when you really find
Yeah,
out how who
and that's
people
you
are.
find your own character. Are you
Yep,
able to dig
absolutely.
down and still, have some character
Yeah.
when it's a really tough couple years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which not to spend too much time on that, but that's kind of one of those blessings of, yeah, in the moment, it's not like we like struggle, but there's so many benefits that can come out of going through those things, discovering things about yourself and adjusting things in your business and in your life that you didn't really see. There were blind spots maybe for you and all that.
And
Yeah.
and if you're really good at what you do, it culls the people that aren't out of the market. You
Yeah,
know, it really
exactly.
makes a difference. The people that are really astute and really work hard and know what they're doing survive. And
Yep.
in good times, everybody's in the market.
Yep.
Everybody thinks that they're a brilliant investor or
Exactly.
or a brilliant broker or something. But yeah, it can, and it also, as I said earlier, it also is when some of the best buys happen. You know,
Absolutely. Yep.
So,
Yeah, and I think you didn't really 100% say this, but you talked about cycles and kind of where we're at, and I think these next couple of years there's going to be a lot of opportunity. There's going to be people kind of holding back, sitting on the sidelines, maybe even falling out of the business. There's going to be less competition because of that, and a few other things, and interest rates and all that. And I think it's going to be a great time. It's always a good time to buy if you buy right, but I think the next couple of years there's going to be a lot of opportunity.
I
Um,
I agree with you. And that unfortunately a lot of that's generated because somebody's bank line didn't get renewed.
yeah,
And
very
they
true.
just had to do something, unfortunately. But
Yep, that
if
is
you can
very true.
buy it, you're helping. I mean, they don't have to sell it to you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because I just did another podcast with a syndicator last week, and that was exactly what we were talking about too. Is there's going to be these people that have to, their loans are adjusting the rate and it doesn't pencil anymore. Their debt service coverage ratio isn't where it needs to be, so the
Yeah.
bank's going to call the note. Bridge loans that are coming due, all of this stuff that people got into this short term debt, not expecting rates to be where they're at. And yeah, one perspective could be, well, you're taking advantage of that, but really, they need a solution one way or the other, right? So
Yes.
you
And you
can
don't.
be a
It's your
solution.
choice. You're just making an offer.
Exactly.
You know, Somebody doesn't have to
Exactly.
take it. But what are you willing to pay?
Yep.
That's good information for somebody.
Absolutely. Yep. Love it. So you wrote a book recently, right? Called
Yeah.
Profit with Presence. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Profit with Presence: The 12 Pillars of Mindful Leadership. It really tries to bridge the gap. A lot in the business community say, "Oh, mindfulness, that's woo woo." I don't have time for that. Someday I'll do that after I retire. And then in the mindfulness community, I found, and it's not universal, but some, money is a dirty word. And I say, when we're in a capitalist system, it has to be okay to make money. I love capitalism.
Yeah.
And I just think what's missing from capitalism is more mindfulness, more consciousness, more things like I say, mindfully creating community and those kind of things. We can make some more ethical choices. And actually, I think the world works when we help as we can, you know,
Yeah.
and
I agree. Yeah.
reach out. And otherwise, if capitalism is just about the 1% going to the moon and the rest of the people, on the backs of the rest of the world, I mean, that's not going to work.
Yeah. I
It's
agree.
not,
Yeah. And there
it's not,
has been
it's
more.
not sustainable.
Yeah, and there has been more of a movement in recent years for, like, social entrepreneurship, right? Where there's a
It
little
has
bit
been.
more,
Yeah.
um, of that piece to it, where it's not just about profit, it's about, and I think both from the entrepreneur side and from the consumer perspective, like, where people are looking for that, where it's like, "Okay, are you just about the bottom line and making a profit, or are you doing something beyond that that's
And
just
we've
more."
become so short-term profit oriented
Mhm.
without long-term. I mean, what good is the short-term profit if the planet's a mess?
Yeah.
What are we leaving our children? So what
Yep.
I'm saying is I think you can do both. Profit with presence says, no, I can go and make a good living and also make a difference in my community,
Yep.
where I can. And I think if I boiled mindfulness down to one word, it'd be focus. Can I focus on my work when I'm there? And can I turn that off? And when I go home at night, can I focus on my family, which is really why I work and why I have a job and why I want
Mhm.
to go out so I can
Yeah.
provide for them. But if I can't go and be with my family and I'm constantly dragged back into the workday, 24/7, it's much less valuable
Yeah.
than if I can use it as a source. And actually, the other thing is, if I can really focus at work when I work, I can move the world in a few hours a day. So we're
Yeah.
so distracted, and our laptops are open, our phones are open. We're meeting with people. We're not really, people have things to say to us. We're not even ready to listen.
Yeah.
So can we focus, and really hone in and take back our focus and avert some of these distractions? Yes, we can. So
Yeah.
Profit with Presence outlines our mindful leadership program, just how you can do that step by step, and it goes different depths, so you can do whatever. And the other amazing thing is it takes a lot less than people think to get started. I mean, a few minutes a day, you can really start to change and form some habits that can change your whole life.
Awesome. Those little things that can make a big difference, and
Totally.
kind of like what we think we have to work 12, 14 hours a day when really it's not about doing as much as you can. It's about doing the right things and being, effective and efficient and not just busy, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and also being accessible to those people we care about.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%. Yep,
Right.
yeah, because you mentioned earlier too, like being able to turn off and we all say what we're that we're most of us a big part of our why, what we do, and what we're out trying to do is provide for our family, right? And so we say this is who we're doing it for, but then is working 7 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day, is that really doing it for your family? Because they'd probably rather have you present than have you make a few extra bucks, right? So
Yeah, and I think if you're present, you're going to do better anyway. You're
yeah,
going to see.
absolutely.
I've definitely come up with found opportunities that I wouldn't even have noticed if I hadn't slowed down a little bit to be aware.
And that is a great point. That is a really great point, because we feel like we have to be going, going, going. And it's in those moments, I think, where you're not just going, going, where you see those other opportunities,
Yeah,
and you actually can be, it's like, well, I don't have time to work out or exercise or whatever. Well, okay. Or is actually going to make you more focused and ready to take on the day, because you're going to be more energized. Okay. So, I mean, it's like, well, or I'm going to spend 12 hours today working, or
well,
okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to be mindful and I'm going to be aware, and you actually can
they,
accomplish more.
they
See,
still
see
haven't found anybody
opportunities.
in their deathbed that said, "I wished I had worked more."
Yeah, right,
You know, I just
right.
well, maybe there's been somebody, but the scientists, that's not what they're finding.
Yeah, yeah,
And they're finding that people wish, and Harvard just completed a 70-year-long study. 500 people, I think, started it. Fewer than that ended it, but they found the number one source of happiness was long-term relationships.
yeah. Not
That the
surprising, right?
ability.
The basics, right? The things we know, but we just tend to forget in the busyness of life. So, yep.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the show and for all of the insights. If people want to reach out to you and connect about your book, find out more about your program, what's the best way for them to do that?
Livinginthegap spelled out.org is our website. You can send us a message there. There's free resources there. There's a book list if you want to get started with easy books to get started with. There's some practices, anything to do with our programs. or the book's available on the website or on Amazon.
Excellent.
Good way to get
Well,
them introduced to.
I would encourage everybody listening to reach out, grab a copy of the book. Make sure you reach out if you're interested in learning more about living in the gap in that program and working with Eric and his team. Eric, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate your time and insights.
Thanks for having me, Ben.